joining us this evening for our conversation on fatherhood, the importance of father figures in all of our lives. I'm joined by colleagues, friends, all across the country this evening, and I'm just excited for this conversation. And I just want to start off welcoming you all, thanking you all for taking time out of your busy professional and personal lives to just have this conversation, just to build with each other and connect like we always do. So I want to start off by introducing myself. Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Page, Senior Director of National Programs here at MCSR. And I'm joined by, like I said, some dear colleagues and friends of mine and fathers and father figures. So first, I just want to my sitting next to me, my colleague Josh Bailey. Start off with Josh, and we'll do some introductions. Everyone introduce themselves and their organization and their connection to this work and each other, and then we'll jump right into the conversation.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. My name, as Jason said, my name is Joshua Bailey. I serve as the Community Education Manager here at NCSR, and I got connected to this work through our Administrative Club programming. Excited to talk about father from the perspective of father figures, and even as a mentor, working in different communities with young men and young adults as it relates to promoting healthy versions of masculinity and manhood. I'm excited to learn from these amazing men that I'm so privileged to be on screen today with. So I guess I'll just popcorn it to Neil.
Great. Thanks, Josh. And hello and good evening to everyone. My name is Neil Irvin. I'm Executive Director here at MCSR. And just as my colleagues have said, I'm just really blessed and thankful to get to see my brothers who I don't get to see regularly as often as I would like. And it's always good to be in spaces with them and to learn from their experience and wisdom and just overall humanity. So it's always a blessing, and I couldn't be more excited looking forward to this conversation. And I will pass it to my dear friend, Jeff.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Neil. Jason and Josh, thank you for gathering us, and people tuning in. Thanks y'all for sharing some time with us. My name is Jeff Matsushita. You see him pronouns. I'm a son, first and foremost, third generation. I was born and raised in Montana. I live in Idaho now, and my partner and I, Julie, are going to celebrate our 20 years of marriage at the beginning of September. So we got 3 young folks that we get the opportunity to grow with and learn alongside. Jay's 13 and Jensen's 9. This work found me around engaging men. So I had the opportunity to learn different ways of engaging men with the end goal of ending violence. But a lot of the side effects are healing, wholeness, and not just what I teach, because I really learn more. And so the time that I've got to spend with Neil and Jason over the years of being loved and showing love has helped make me a better father and just a human being overall. So appreciate the opportunity to be with y'all. And I'm gonna pass it on to James.
Yeah, just like everybody else, man, it's great to be amongst you brothers. We have these kinds of conversations pretty often. And so especially over the last few months here in 2023, I've had the opportunity to engage with everybody here. So I love when we have these conversations. That said, James Morale, I work for Hopeful Horizons. I'm the Director of Prevention and Outreach here. And Hopeful Horizons, we are a children's advocacy, domestic violence, and rape crisis center. And so my job working in prevention and outreach is to really change the culture of violence. And so similar to Jeff, man, I feel like this work found me, man. Over 10 years ago, I had the opportunity to really to apply for this position that's working with young men in schools, right? And I did it, and it fits me perfectly. It fits who I am as an individual, fits who I am and my purpose in life. And I love just doing what I do, being able to engage with youth. On a personal level, I actually, I'm a husband as well. Me and my wife too has been together for, she's gonna kill me, like 26, 27 years, something like that. But yeah, we've been together a long time, but and I love it, man. I have a college senior, my daughter. I have my son who's a high school rising 11th grader, and my youngest daughter who's a middle school rising 8th grader. So again, just appreciate y'all boys in the conversation. I'll pop it over to my man, Matt.
All right, thanks, James. Hi, everybody. So Matt Tyler. I am the Violence Prevention Supervisor with ABDA, which stands for Aid to Victims of Domestic Abuse, down in South Florida, Palm Beach County, Florida. I've had the pleasure of, being TA provider from MCSR for 7 years now. I've been doing the work for 8. And I think aligning it with this conversation, I'm also, a father of 2. When I started this work, I was engaged and now have soon to be 7-year-old, a few weeks away, and a 2.5-year-old, right? So the work is very much aligned with the fatherhood piece for me over the years. And my colleague, Marcos, is on.
Hello, everybody. Marcos Fleury. I am a violence prevention educator with ABDA, same as Matt. I kind of came kind of late because I beat traffic to get here. So I'm going to assume based on what people were saying, we're just kind of checking in. Me personally, I'm a son. I'm not a father, not yet at least. Well, if it does happen, it happens. I'm not really pushing myself to do anything like any kind of goals of that particularly, but I'm just a son for now. I am an uncle of a few kids actually. So yeah, that's my connection to the topic. I'm an uncle. I'm a father figure
And a mentor to many.
Yeah, I'm a mentor for sure. Yeah, so that's my relation to the work.
Yes, thank you, Matt, for reminding Marcos. He's a mentor of many, right? We are fathers on the screen, and Josh and Marcos, like Marcos said, they're not fathers yet, but we remind them as men and colleagues that they are our true mentors, right? And they are father figures to men here in DC and South Florida alike and nationally. So like I said, I'm just excited for this conversation. Excited because like Matt said, when I started doing this work, I was not a father, but this work and my life has truly aligned. James mentioned that we do this often. We meet and connect and build often. So it's a blessing to truly do this. And for those folks that are tuning in and will tune in, we hope that, we can offer something as, we are a village, and we know that it takes a village to not only raise a child, but to keep our communities healthy and strong. So we just want to set a good example by doing so. And we hope these conversations are an example of that. So I just wanted to start out, and this is a free-flowing conversation, like all of our conversations are. But we do have a couple of questions that want to, set off the conversation. And my first question to you all: what does being a father, being a dad, mean to you? What does it mean to you? How does that make you feel?
I'll start and say, we all, especially here in this group, we talk about this thing called the dominant story of masculinity, right? Which kind of tells society tells men how they are supposed to be. And so for me, as a man growing up in the society, when you ask the question of what does it mean to me, I would say certainly initially it meant pressure, right? Because the pressure of the dominant story was that as a man, you got to be the one, right? You got to be the one to take care of everything. You got to be the one to work hard, make the money, do all of these things, right? And know all of these things. And it's crazy because we have these expectations, but there's not a playbook on how to be a father, right? And so I've learned certainly at this point that being a father is just doing the best that you can and winging it, right? I think that for me, when I think about what does it mean to be a father, I think it just means that I'm supposed to be the person that sets the example, and to be a great example for my daughters of what they should aspire to look for in a man, and for my son, the type of man that he should be. And I strive to do that every day. And man, all the rest of the stuff, right? The doctor's appointments and the boozes and all and the fun and all those kinds of things, man, that stuff comes naturally for me. So I love it, man. So for me, I think if I could sum it up in one word, it would be just to be the example, right? Be the example of the kind of man my daughter would want to also be with, and the type of man that my son should be.
I'll come in there. And as James was talking, I'm always, you're always thinking as everyone's talking, right? I think being a father is like a primary role, right? It becomes that in your life, and just all encompassing of your everyday thoughts, actions, or whatever that might be, and the importance that it brings. I think of things like responsibility, right? Comes with power, right? And understanding the power that you have. And, you know, I call it the tiny humans, man. They just have that trust in you, right? If I had to go somewhere, we're going somewhere, you know, 2-year-old's getting in the car and he's just trusting that wherever you're going to take him is going to be a safe place, right? Or you're going to protect them wherever they are, that you know, you're going to feed them and provide, and all of these things that, you know, to use provider as one of those dominant stories, it's what is a provider, right? And I think that's some of the conversations we even get into here of, it's not just, yeah, the roof over your head and the food, but then moving into like the emotional support and educational supports and all of these other things that I've learned through this work.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And James, especially naming that counter story, dominant story one. It's one of it's the title like that I had a really active role in becoming, but it's an ongoing thing, and it allows me to draw back and forward in my history and my experiences, to kind of recreate and co-create with my partner how we're going to do this in raising these little humans who we brought into the world. They didn't ask to be, and so we bring them in, and it's this opportunity for me to kind of like reflect on the relationship I had with my father and other men, just like you said, like just because they don't have biological children, you know, that they're still fathers in my life that were mentors, coaches, teachers. So it's a chance to re-examine and relearn. But it's that one title that I take seriously, but I am really a lifelong learner in it. And so I get to be alongside of them now at 13 and 9 is really cool because they have interests beyond just what we do. Like you said, Matt, your 2-year-old, you know, there's power in that. And I think now I get to share some of that power and watch them lead into their own power and follow their interests. And so relearning my humanity and the permissions that I can give myself to be emotionally expressive, to communicate, to celebrate and have joy and dreams. I get to be silly again. And that was one of the conversations with my therapist. Like we'd have dance parties at the house. And if for a first bit, I couldn't, or if I did, I was just in this 2-step role. But talking with my therapist and other men too, like I took myself so damn seriously that I forgot to have fun and how to have fun. So that's part of my relearning is how to have fun again and giggle and laugh from the belly. So thank you for the question.
I guess I would add to what you all have shared. You know, I think of for me, it's certainly what I think of as my identity. It's the thing that I, you know, value and treasure most. It's what I think of as most important to me, the thing that I most enjoy. And certainly I have other interests and you know, we talk about raising our children to leave us, and that's certainly the case. Their mother and I will always be their home. But preparing these young people to go out into the world and find their joy, purpose, and happiness feels like a big role. And as Jeff was saying, a big learning opportunity, an ongoing learning opportunity that is all encompassing and saturates, you know, so much of who I see myself as a human being. And I wouldn't trade it for the world. I just so celebrate it and em it and love it and benefit from it and feel responsible for it. So I think a lot of it is my identity as a person, and really embracing all of the elements from laughing, belly laughs and silliness and dance parties and trampolines and pools and cooking shows and recipes, and the difficult moments of wanting to do it in a way that serves them, but also I am clear with my children, I am not their friend, I am their father, and my responsibility starts there.
Thank you, Neil. And listening to you all, because there's one word, recently, being a father of a 3-year-old, to you all, it confirms that one word that always pops into my head, and that's being present. From the day, my wife told me she was pregnant, to being into the living room, to knowing that when I leave here and after this wonderful conversation, rushing home to make sure, I can be there when it gets laid down to bed, right? It's being present to me. So I agree with, all of what you said, but it's I pride myself personally on consistency, and it's the one role that I put at the forefront of my life now. And I want to be present for all of that encompasses. So yeah, definitely just being present, being there. We're back traveling for work again, and I love it. But last time we traveled, I wasn't a father. So even having experienced those nights, being away and loving the work I do, but then also like, man, FaceTime's cool, but I didn't get my, my kiss at night, right? So yeah, just being present, that's what it means to me.
I mean, I would also love to add as a son and as a father figure, I think when I hear the word father, I think of teacher. A lot of times, my father was kind of my first example of what masculinity was in our household, just from how he just carried himself and the things that he taught me, as well as other father figures, my grandfather, just expressing their emotions and how they care for our family. Really teaching me those values. So like Neil said, they taught me to leave them and engage with the world in such a way that would honor my family. So when I think of father, I think of teacher. And I think just to segue the conversation a little bit, another question I'd like to pose to everyone is just considering, so I'd ask you guys, what was your experience of fatherhood as you all were growing up? So either from your direct father or father figures. What are some of the things that you learned from them? And also, how did that impact your relationship with your own children?
I was going to add, as a son and a father figure as well as a mentor, is that I think, like Jason mentioned, like the being present. And I think often sometimes we try to make our sons or make younger men in general try to be more like us and not enough like them. I think we often forget to check ourselves around that, right? We think, okay, cool, I would think I'm the good guy, I'm the good man, so I'm going to teach you how to be me. And it's like, I'm already here, so I don't need them to be like me and to be like themselves. Of course, to be a healthy version of themselves for sure. And I think we should always keep that in mind, that we're supposed to just be there to kind of guide them and, be a safe space for them and to let them be the person they want to be, the person that they want to be, right? So yeah.
Josh, I'll answer your question, man, by saying, for me, my father is still alive, and I love him dearly. But I would say that, growing up, as far as my experience with fatherhood, wasn't the best example of fatherhood, right? In a lot of ways. And I remember when I was like probably about 16-ish, I have a younger brother who's like 8 years younger than me. And there was chaos happening, if you will, in my household. I literally remember holding my little brother, right, because trying to console him or whatnot. And I thought to myself, and I remember it clear as day, man. I thought to myself, like, I won't allow my children to feel the way that we're feeling right now, right, and that I will always, in the future, ensure that I have a healthy relationship with my spouse, right? And when I think about that experience, when I think about me saying that, right, it was really impactful, and I'm so glad that, that that my life turned out like that, right? Because it could have turned out opposite. Because, you know, because I will say that growing up for me, I didn't have the best examples, if you will, of fatherhood. And so I could have easily, kind of taken that path, right? And, it just could have been what it is, right? But I remember, consciously telling myself that I want a different experience when I become a father. And I'm just so thankful that I was able to do that. So for me, my experience growing up was not positive, but I was able to use that to propel me and to make me the kind of man that I am right now. And I'm thankful because my kids, all three of my, my oldest is 20, and none of my kids have ever seen me or my wife literally disrespect each other, raise their voice at each other at all. And I think if me and my wife should do a social experiment and fake an argument one day, they'll probably break down and freak out. They wouldn't know what to do. Yeah, so I'm just thankful for that experience. I went through that experience, but I'm thankful that it turned out the way that it did.
I'll go after that. Since you mentioned your father, James, I'll share with you guys that my colleagues know my father's still alive as well. He's 90. My mother is 88. They've been married for 64 years. And, sometimes in this work, I don't ever feel ashamed of it, but I'm mindful. Jason talks about presence. I'm a square from the suburbs, and, my father created an environment for my siblings and myself that we were safe and we were loved and we were parented. And I know how fortunate we are that, our parents, and in this moment, specifically our father, he raised us. He provided for us. I saw him cook and clean. I saw him, take me to practice and be at our events. So all the things that you would say were protective factors for raising children, my father was that. Born in, during the Depression era of 1933 in the segregated South of Lexington, Kentucky, to earn a master's degree from the University of Iowa after graduating from the University of Kentucky, after being in the Air Force. Our nickname for our father is the Oak Tree. He provided. And, even now as he is battling dementia, Jason and my colleagues know, if you don't laugh, you'll cry. He's dealing with dementia and had a fall and had to be in a rehab for a few weeks, and yet had lived such a quality life and was so wise with his career and his investments that he was able to continue taking care of himself and my mother while he's not even consciously aware of what's going on around him. And so I just admire him in every phase of his life. I laughed because I was like, man, this guy's not even conscious with us most days, and I'm still trying to live up to his example. So I just really feel blessed that that's what I expect my work is for my children, living up to the Oak Tree's example of being a human being and being a father, and being a father in, a really comprehensive way that, in our work, some would see that as progressive, but for me, it was just normal. He raised me the way his father raised him, and my aunts and uncles. And so I just know that is not all of the experiences of the young people that we serve. So I have great sensitivity and compassion when I enter into spaces, when Jay talks about consistency and presence, when Josh talks about our role and Marcos talks about our role as mentors. I'm mindful that everybody's not had the experience I've had or the father that I've had. And so I try to show and provide a little bit of the love that my father has given me to the young people that we serve, because I do believe it's what sustains, and it feels like the least that I can do for all that I've benefited from his love and guidance and care. And so I try to honor him in our work, because, as I said, even at 90 years old with dementia, he would hold my hand crossing the street today if I let him, and he's in a wheelchair. So I just really feel fortunate about all of that.
My father also is still alive, and I find that blessing to be able to still ask him questions and get clarity, because my memory is what it is. And he fills in the blanks, and I fill in the blanks for him, and it's a really cool thing. And I don't know when it happened, but I went from being like his son to like and then his golf buddy. And there was this weird time where like I'm his golf buddy now. But we'll watch games together. And I love the college basketball time of year. My dad's a wrestler. He wrestled in college and
Wow.
I never did. And so he found an interest in basketball because that was my love, right? So, and my dad was a football coach for like 27 years. And his statement was always, leave the program better than you found it. Like that was always his entry conversation to the seniors as they're coming in. You know, what was their legacy going to be? And I believe that my dad passed that to me, but my dad also broke the cycle of what could have been possible for me. It was the 80s in Western Montana, and the story he told me was he called the Montana Domestic Violence Hotline because he knew as he was moving, he was either going to hurt my mom or hurt me. And he didn't want that. He knew enough that he needed help. And, you know, the story of I just knew he was going to anger management in the 80s and 90s. That's what it was called. But my dad changed my trajectory by making a choice. And I think as fathers, the choices that we get to make now as men, either with our own biological or as mentors and coaches, teachers, that conscious idea of making choice, like you said, Jason, by being present, helps that trajectory and gives permission. So now I feel like my role is the third generation of Japanese American here in the United States. My generation gets to heal. So my dad didn't get a lot of time to heal some of the traumas he experienced, my grandfather experienced. So leaving the program better than I found it. Now I know my work is as a father is being present and dealing with the shame and not parenting from shame, right? So this conscious effort of, again, moving the needle as we move through making the program better than we found it.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, I'll come in. Gonna shift that line a little bit because I lost my dad when I was 16. So it's a little different story, right? And I think it shows one to the why we need Josh and Marcos and the mentors, because even at 16, as Jeff said, I still had questions. I was still looking for mentorship, right? I was still looking for that figure. You know, while I had him, my father was very, what I heard is like being present, you know, like Jason mentioned. He was very involved through actions, I would say, was all of it. Coached my sports team, so I had a lot of connection with the sports. And even though my parents were divorced young, they were both still involved in, you know, co-parenting and things like that. I think what I take away, what I'm intentional about is, you know, kind of like James was kind of leaning into was about communicating, because I didn't see that. Right. So it's kind of that very few words, not about a lot of emotion, right? It would show up and do everything, but not those other pieces, right? So I could recognize, okay, that's something that I can work on to be better at, you know, as a father. And then also just I think, you know, just that piece of also I can be in any mentor roles and these roles I have here. And, you know, I always thought about coaching so that I could fill that spot I knew that, you know, young men need even more than just one figure to look up to, right? You're always looking to multiple figures, mentors, coaches, whatever that might be. You know, I had my grandfather, right? I do have grandfather still alive at 92, you know, and he was a college baseball coach his whole life. So he has influenced many people. And I've heard some of those stories, you know, not just his own 7 kids, but all these players that he had come up through, right? So knowing that that's a big role, not just your direct, you know, biological fatherhood or whatever it is, that you're also in your community, the father.
Yeah. My experience growing up, unfortunately, my biological father wasn't present. The first 5 years of my life, more present than any part, but in and out my life, and adjusting to that. And when it comes to father figures, and when it comes to, you know, mentors, lucky to have, you know, my basketball coach, my uncles, my grandfather, fill those spots and those voids. But the man who is my father, who I call my father, I don't use the language of stepfather. My dad, met my mom at 13 years old. And I had questions, Matt, right? But I didn't really care about them being answered. I didn't know that role was even important because I didn't have it, that actual father figure daily role. But I'm so proud and happy and blessed that he stepped into my life. And him not having a father stepped into it with ease. Him not having any children stepped into it with ease, and raised me and my brother. And that right there, he really set the foundation for love in my household. The way he took care of me and my brother to the utmost, but more importantly, he took care of my mother. So I saw that role be fit, that foundation, those foundational blocks be put into place, and that role be filled to the utmost, to where, I still have my uncles and, those mentors, but it's my father, who has filled that role. And luckily, experience in older age, I reconnected with my biological father. And that has been something with the encouragement of my father. So that's been something. And that's been another example of just love in the form of forgiveness. And that's just something I know that my son is going to benefit from tenfold, So yeah, I think it's those experiences, when we're younger, that help mold you, because I was bitter. I was bitter until my father came into my life. But how can I be when he set that foundation, he poured into me and my brother the way he did and continues to, and now showing up as a grandfather the way he does. So yeah, for sure.
I was gonna share that for my dad, the person he was when I was like a kid, not the person he is now. And I don't know where that growth or change came from at all, because like, see how my hair is like long now. When my hair was this long as a kid, he made me cut it off because I was supposed to have that, right? But now he sees me with long hair, he doesn't make any comments about it, doesn't say anything negative about it. I have piercings and like different like pieces on my face, and my like the hanging earrings, my nose, like all these different things. I don't know where it came from. But yeah, like if you would have told my dad would have looked at me and still loved me like the way I look now when I was like a kid, I wouldn't have believed you, right? Because a lot of things that as a kid that I was just doing just because as kids do, not anything negative, whatever, just trying things out. He didn't like them, but like now I found this. Actually, when I was getting my first tattoo, first of all, I'm Haitian. So that should let you know everything you need to know. Yeah, I'm Haitian. So like when I get my first tattoo, I was like 18, 19 years old, and I told my parents about it, just to let them know what was gonna happen. My dad was one that actually supported me. My mom was like, scared. My mom was like, crying and making a big thing about it. He was like, oh no, he's a good kid. He's graduating school. He has good grades. I don't see the issue. I'm like, you saying this? So like again, like this is again being the thing of like he doesn't have any tattoos, any piercings, right? So being like I said before, like being the person, I'm gonna let you be the person you want to be as long as you're a good person, right? You're not causing any harm out here. I don't see an issue, right? I think at one point he was trying to make me more like him, right? And it got to the point of like, oh no, this is who you are, and this is who you are. Yeah.
Y'all growing together, Marcos. Growing together. And I see Gary, our brother Gary has joined us. I don't know if he's ready. I know technology can be a hassle at times, but please, Gary, join us whenever you feel comfortable. Gary's from South Carolina, Engaging Men and Boys, another dear friend and colleague of all of ours. Y'all mentioned our work, right? I think I mentioned our work in the dominant story and the counter story, which leads to the Engaging Men and what we care at Mixer and all your organizations talk about healthy masculinity, right? And as fathers, as father figures, can y'all talk about the personal connection and the work that we all do in healthy masculinity and fatherhood and how those two things are connected, and how do you see, when did it connect to you? How do you see it, and what does it mean?
I was gonna think about what Neil said about how being mindful of the way people grew up is different than the way you grew up. So I think for me, doing the work that I do is that I recognize everybody had a father growing up in their household. So I try to be as much as not trying to be their dad and like that, but being like a strong person in their life that they can look up to and have conversations with. And or at least think about the things that I think or they mentioned they might be lacking, that they might need, and being able to fill that role for them if I can. Right. Even before I started doing this work, I've been engaging youth, since I was like in college. Actually, like I work with high school kids in college, and then after I graduated college, I worked at a juvie. I think just being mindful of the fact that these people, like these particular groups of people, need certain things from me. They don't just need somebody to just come at them and just talk to them for an hour, hour and a half, or 2 hours out of the week, whatever it is. Right. They need somebody to just kind of sit there and just vibe with them. Right. So I think my relationship with my father and having those conversations with him, where we just talk about certain things, being able to give that to them whenever I can. Yeah.
And I'll add that the counsel story, folks have mentioned us, heard us mention the counsel story, right? Because the dominant story, as we all teach and talk about, says that men are supposed to be a certain way. And especially if you're a father, right? You're supposed to be the leader in the household. You're supposed to be the breadwinner. You're supposed to do all of these things, that we put men and fathers in as a box, right? But the counter story to that is the things that aren't traditionally, right? And quote unquote, traditionally masculine or traditionally father-like, right? And so for me, the way that I tie in healthy masculinity for me and my work and who I am as an individual is the example that I'm setting for my kids. My kids see their father do the non-traditional father stuff, if you will, right? So just like some of you all mentioned, right? Like I cook, I've washed clothes, fold clothes, clean, mop the floor, take kids to doctor's appointments. I show up at PTA meetings, parent teachers meetings, all of those kinds of things, right? So I do all of that. Also, I'm, especially now, being in this work for years, my kids know, like, if you tell a story in a house or they're telling me something about something that happened in school or some conflict or whatever, I'm the peacemaker, right? I'm not the one that's going to be like, oh, they hit you, you hit them back, right? I'm going to give a lecture, on like, okay, well, we all got to be, together, and that's why humanity and all. Like, I'm gonna take it all. I'm gonna take it there, and they go, oh, dad, right? But like for me, I'm that person. They see their father as a peaceful person. They see their father as somebody who's just kind of even keel. They never see me get angry, upset. Those traditional male archetypes, if you will. Certainly, I'm stern with them when I need to be, right? As far as, disciplining them or, just kind of, things that they do as kids, and that happens. But overall, I provide the counter story to my children, and that certainly bleeds over into even my profession. And everywhere I go, I think I'm proud to say, like, if you asked me the question of, like, if anybody could describe you, right, what kind of words would they use? I'm confident in saying that anybody who knows me would say that I'm peaceful, right, that I'm humble, that, I'm just kind of this kind of person who loves everybody, all of those kinds of things. So I provide that counter story, and I am that counter story in every aspect of my life. And so I'm just really glad that my kids get to experience that.
All right. I'll share this one because the counter story part, right? I actually said it to, I think, Marcos and our other staff. It was like, well, I'm going to intentionally create counter stories, right? So it was the end of the school year, for us back in May, and they were asking for volunteers. They're asking for parent volunteers for the end of the year party for, first graders, right? So running the games and coming in, and I'm going to take some hours off of work. I'm going to do this, right? The funny part was the reflection of the norms, right? So me and a mom were standing outside the classroom door. The teacher opened the door. She goes, oh, I didn't know fathers were going to be here today. I think I had shared maybe once before, but it just applies to, like, right? Like, yeah, I'm going to show up. I'm going to, participate in the games and have fun. And, like Jeff was talking about the dance parties and things, like, yeah, it was me and 6 moms, but it doesn't, like, my daughter sees me there, and she'd been asking all year long, because there's always volunteer opportunities for parents. Are you going to come in? Are you going to do it? All right. So I surprised her that day and told her I was coming. And I think also talking about, like, the stereotypes and some of the harmful things, is like the little things like at home, right? So the daughter and the son. So there's obviously a lot of gendered toys in the house, right? So, you know, my wife was putting like extensions in my daughter's hair like last week, and my son grabs one of the extensions colored and pink and he sticks it in his hair, and we got grandma at home with us too, right? And you can tell she looks a little nervous or like uncomfortable. I'm like, okay, you're uncomfortable. He's not uncomfortable. He's having a good time. And even I can recognize, I'm like, you know, like in yourself, but you have to challenge that feeling and be like, he's just enjoying it, right? Or if he picks up one of his sister's dolls or Barbies or whatever, teach him how to carry it properly. Not, no, don't play with that, right? Like it's those little things, I think, that you're shifting and changing that projection down the road. That's allowing him to just have that creativity is great for kids, and you know, allowing them to have that space to do that at that young age. You know, he's not going to know if I don't play with that. Why? He's not processing at 2.5 years old. Why? Right. But he is still going to take it in. So I think those are some of those things that kind of just as Jason said, you know, or James said as well, is that it just kind of bleeds it into all of your life, especially in your fatherhood.
Yeah, I think what's so nice for our son is that he does have older sisters. And like you're saying, Matt, I want him prepared for and have skills to embrace, you know, all that's going to help him learn about who and how he's going to become who he's going to become. And there's a side where there's moments where his sisters, who are also aggressive, will say, oh, he's being so aggressive. And it's like, well, we like him aggressive. We want him aggressive. We just want it channeled in the right direction. And there's also a side where he's a very sweet, loving boy. And we want to nurture that. And to your point, years ago, you know, before he had superhero dolls or action figures, he would play with his sister's Barbies. And when he started to collect his Hulk and Superman and Batman, you know, the Barbie that his older sister had given him was his favorite toy. He just loves his older sister. And the Barbie was the baddest of the bunch. Like she was always coming out on top. You know, he hadn't gendered or saw or sees his sisters as weak. He sees them as powerful, and he sees what they do as powerful, and he wants to be powerful. And he learned that through his older sisters who could best him at times. And so I think that there is this preparation for our children as a father that is different than even what my father was allowed to do. Embracing a broader experience for them prepares them to be able to be multifaceted in becoming human beings and having a broader range of knowing their emotions. And again, there's nothing wrong with being aggressive. There's nothing wrong with being aggressive, and there's nothing wrong with being angry. It's the discipline of identifying it and managing it and channeling it into something that is not destructive to yourself or others. I think that is something that my father, who again was very loving and very, very gentle, but still was raising us in some very traditional ways as children. So I think there's a broader way that we as fathers can be and mentors can be now with boys that I really celebrate. And I think that all of our work has contributed to it because it's necessary. It's a far more complicated and sophisticated world than when I was a boy. And I want my children prepared to go left or right, depending on the circumstances, and have the skills to, stay with their convictions and follow their purposes in life, and to recognize who they are at all times. Knowledge of self is a really important message that we try to promote with our children. And I just think it's so central to their growth. So I think that's great let's just teach them how to hold a baby properly, because your little cousins may come over, and if you want to hold the baby, there's a way to support the head, and here's how you do it. And they certainly want to demonstrate that they're getting big enough to hold the babies and to do those things. So to me, that's a blessing. And I want my son, who regularly talks about when he's a father, what that's going to be. Well, let's start that training early, and let's teach you, diapers and bottles, and holding the baby properly is all a part of that.
Thank you, Neil. And Gary, I see you joined us. Welcome. I want to just give you space, brother, to first and foremost introduce yourself and your organization. And I wanted to just double back really quick. We started out, Gary, and your voice is important. After you introduce yourself and your organization, I wanted to you to answer this question. Our first primary question was, what does being a father/dad mean to you? So go ahead, Gary, please.
All right. I'm the program coordinator for Lancaster's Engaging Men here in South Carolina. And we, of course, have a Most Club here, thanks to Jason and the rest of the guys. What a father/dad means to me. And I will say this, my wife and I haven't been blessed to bring any children into the world, but God has brought a lot of young people into our world. So we serve kind of like as parents, mentors to a lot of young people. I don't know. I think I use the analogy that I think it's Dondre Whitfield in Male vs. Man. He wrote this book and he says, being a man is like a tree. You never have to ask a tree for shade. You don't have to ask it for oxygen. You don't have to ask it for anything that it gives, but it naturally gives shade, protection, oxygen, food. I believe as a man, that's how you're supposed to show up in the world. You're supposed to show up in the world to protect the people that are around you, to love them, to support them, to encourage them, to guide them, to shade them. You have to do all of those things. So for me, I think that analogy that he utilizes for me is like my visual concept of manhood / being a dad. I'm supposed to be all of those things for myself, first of all, because it starts with me. I have to lead myself correctly. And then obviously my wife, and then my children, and then my community, and out into the broader world.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, just thinking about some of the framework that guys at work, I mean, speaking to that socio-ecological model, that awareness starts with the individual. And then as, you know, this understanding of healthy masculinity or love, it just spews out into the other spaces in our lives through relationships, community, and society. I would say my connection to this work started in high school, actually in the Men of Strength Club period with Jason, actually. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and in Southeast DC, a space where violence is present. Growing up, seeing all of the examples of what unhealthy masculinity, I didn't even know what that meant at the time was, but being able to navigate and see, like, I really don't want to, that's not the type of man I want to be. And even just in high school, like I remember the short story of just, you know, being a freshman and, you know, navigating the school in this new lay of the land. And I noticed that this guy was following me around my first few weeks in high school, kind of stalking me, was all over the place. And this gentleman, he happened to be the football coach, because I was always a tall, pretty well-built guy. And he would always approach me, and even to the point, you know, he would be at the exit door after school, just trying to like get me to join the football team. And he would use these things that were just like, oh, you'll get the girl, you get all this access, you get gear, you get all these things that are attractive when you're living in that dominant story framework. But for me, I was like, hey, honestly, I can get all those things without the football teams. I don't think I need to be a part of this dynamic to gain access. And for me, the Most Club, when I found it, was a space that empowered me to have that ability to choose and find alternatives and really identify the spaces and the type of masculinity that I wanted to express as a young man and a leader within my community. So that really started in high school with Jason, through his consistency, his compassion for us. A brother that's from, you know, shout out to Morristown, New Jersey, that came to DC and was just consistent and just really was, you know, authentically himself. He didn't try to be like us, or he didn't try to, like, you know, be someone he wasn't. And that for me was just an impression of healthy masculinity that said, wow, I can be myself and still be a healthy man. Like there's nothing wrong with that, but understanding the dynamics, these unhealthy attributes, these thought processes that can contribute to these types of violence and even this dominant story. Those are the things that we need to unpack and identify so that I can have the ability to construct the type of healthy man that I wanted to be. So that really started at the Men of Strength Club, I want to say almost a decade ago, which is insane to think about. As I am now, Jason knew me as a boy, and talk about just, you know, building healthy and sustainable relationships with community. I just turned 30 years old this past February, so that speaks to the longevity and that level of consistency that is needed, so much that it had an impression on me to want to be an example of healthy masculinity within my community. And even now, just, you know, Neil and Jason knows this, to where I can't go around DC without seeing veteran most club members that just, come and approach me and just speak about that experience that they had, what that consistency meant to them, and what the presence of providing that safer space to unpack. That, like I said, these dominant narratives of masculinity just meant to them and gave them a perspective that in many ways they express that changes their lives. And whom are also now some are fathers and father figures as well. And to see that they're still carrying on those messages that they learned in the Ministry Club.
I think for me, being connected to this work, meeting Neil, 14, 15 years ago, and in a space that I love, right? It was being able to talk about, I met Neil at the University of Maryland working with the football program. And he was having these conversations in a very traditional masculine space, but having conversations about manhood in a different way that I was drawn to. And I think that's helping me connect, myself and connect myself truly through the social emotional intelligence that I have. And I think that's helping me as a father now, know that all the things that I'm teaching this 3-year-old boy, right? The world is wide open for him. And I see his innocence every day. But it helps me check myself that not only that, tying his shoes, using the bathroom, doing all this stuff, but emotions. If he's not feeling well, why are you not feeling well? Talking it through. And even though he's learning every day and communicating with me personally better than his mother every day, it's those important conversations because he understands. So it's the communication and the ability to be totally checked in my emotions as a father, and my emotions as a husband. And I think this work has truly helped me round that out. But I'll go back to consistency, but that's not just something I can do on the weekends or I can do on Monday and Tuesday. I think, and speaking to you all, y'all being mentors and friends to me, it's every day. I've been checked, confronted, carefronted, and had great conversations with you all that have helped mold me in this work, mold me in being a man, helped mold me be a husband. And like I said, I take this role of father very seriously and hold that to the utmost. And I think it's just being socially, emotional, ready to learn, to teach him, but to learn with him. Because like we're in community, the years of running most clubs, I didn't teach those young men, those boys anything. I didn't. I really feel that way. They taught me everything. If I taught them a little bit, they taught me everything. And it prepared me to be a father. And conversations like this with you all prepared me to be a father. So yeah, I really feel that it's the piece around social emotional learning and social emotional intelligence.
I know we saw some folks come off. I wasn't sure if y'all had anything else to add to that. I saw Jeff and Gary.
Oh, go ahead, Gary.
I guess the only thing that I'll say is when you I really resonate with the part about emotions, because we right now we're in the I'm sitting in the boardroom, and we have what we call a Summer Leadership Academy, where we get a number of young men for 4 weeks in the summer. And most of these young men have been through Reverend Anthony Pelham's Powerhouse curriculum. Powerhouse curriculum talks about baggage, because just as women have baggage, men have baggage. And I think one of the most powerful things that I've learned and have been blessed to be in the space is these young men, they understand how important it is to unpack their baggage. So we just recently, we had an incident the other morning where one of our young men was going through something from the boys' home, and he kind of shut down. But through the process, and because it was a safe space, he was able to sit amongst his peers and shed tears, and nobody looked at him any different at all. And it just reminded me, when I came up, that wasn't the norm. Coming up as a young man in the hood, that wasn't the norm. Going to prison and being in an environment of dog eat dog world, that is not the norm. Coming back into society and then seeing that certain boxes or paradigms still exist about manhood, this is not the norm. But to see a 14-year-old around his peers, 15, some 16, to see them unpack their baggage and just be comfortable and allowing another adult to come and place a hand on his shoulder and say, it's okay, it's all right. And that for me is amazing, but it happens every day. I see it like this happens so regular to the point where, for me, I don't even see it as counter story necessarily because I live this particular way. So for me, that is what manhood is. Being in touch with yourself holistically and understanding that, just like a car, you've got emotions and that car has an exhaust system. There is a need to have an exhaust system because if not, you'll implode. So you have to deal with everything that's within you. But the beauty of these young men is that they show me that so often we hear people say that, society is going to hell in a handbasket, or they'll say something about the new generation, old, you can't reach them if you fear them. And if you don't connect with them, then you can never correct them. Correction without connection is impossible. So for me, just to see them and how they exist and how they show up in the space and how they just allow themselves to, have an adult speak to them and to be patient and to listen even when they don't want to. It gives me hope and it gives me inspiration because the world is a great place. I'm not ready to leave yet because so many of these young people can do great things. They just need us. They just need us to stand in the gap and model something different for them. So that's all I got to say.
I appreciate that, Gary. But you're a coach speaking right there. I love it. Yeah, gotta connect. I also heard like you got to inspect what you expect. In this coaching world and the model behavior. I really appreciate that. It was Neil. You shared with me. I don't know how many years ago it was, but Esther Stoller, former director, Futures Without Violence, the campaign, and she said that men are permission seekers, period. And I think as we move through this world, again, this brotherhood that we have, this connection of other men in different places geographically, different lived experiences, different ages, but that multi-generational beauty of we're all cooking dishes together. And every time we get off these damn calls, there's a new dish that's been made, right? But I know we come back to what we know and where we learn from. And Neil and Jay, we've been in this work long enough to know that a lot of female identified folks have raised us in this work and helped make space and expectations for us, but what it means to be men and the different forms of masculinity, like masculinities, that's plural, different ways of being, and all these different ingredients that we get to make every time we're making up a dish together in a conversation, we can add out. And I think that gives permission for the way we show up with young men in spaces, that we are giving permissions with different ways of being. Things simply is like, I don't know, tell me what you think, listening, asking questions, right? This is that, I love that, Gary, like these next generation of young men are asking for ways for us to be different because there is an expectation of difference. So we get to be part of that change together.
For me, Jeff, I think, that's one of the things I love about being a father. And one of the things I love about working with young people is that their world is changing so readily. The world is being shaped by them. And I'm curious and maybe greedy enough to want to continue observing it. Because I know how much I benefit from, learning what Josh has taught me and what Marcos has taught me. And, before I had children, I talked to our members about, you boys are going to help me raise my children one day. And that's really been the case, to tap into how they interpret the world and their interactions. I don't purchase a piece of technology, a new shoe, without checking in with the young people about what did you think and would you use it? Is this one worth it? And so I think it's right that, the diversity of masculinities, it's plural, and there's that many versions of manhood on the planet that are all, from a pro-social, strength-based approach, really valuable and necessary and useful in their presence and contribution to the human family. So, I don't think that at scale that is dramatic. I just think it's a reality, and everyone's talents to be appreciated, and to share them and to learn. I just love it, and I always just feel so thankful that the young people allow me to share space with them and ask my silly dumb questions about technology or critique their music or their culture, and we do the same back and forth. And like you were talking about your father at the game, right now my role is to be my children's father, but I look at the way my father and I's relationship evolved, where I did get to become his friend, and we could go hit some balls here and there and go to some concerts. He and I we're big jazz and blues people, and whether it be Wynton Marsalis or B.B. King, those are the things that he loved that I was turned on to. So I feel it's a special time for us, and where our work as a field, not only, the leaders, our deputy director, Rachel Friedman, having a desire to like men and support men. And you mentioned Esther Sola earlier, a leader in this field who wants to invite men in this space. I think it's a tremendous benefit to us all. And I continue to just be excited about where our work goes next, because it is so interesting to me still. I still feel excited about what these young people have to teach us.
Oh, thank you, Neil, and everyone else, just for such powerful comments and just, really sharing of yourselves as relates to your connection to the work. I would just love to kind of segue to another question in regards to, building connection and being in a relationship requires a level of vulnerability. So just really want to ask of you all, how do you role model that as a father, as in relation to your children or the communities that you may work with? And how do you allow them to see that vulnerable side of you? How's that expressed in time?
I'll say, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Okay. I think I was actually that particular question. I was talking to one of our young men today when I took him to lunch, letting him know that there's a quote that we use that says, he that has overcome his past has no need to fear it. You have no need to hide it. So a lot of times what I've found is that most men, if they have baggage about an area or they aren't confident in an area, what they'll do is they won't show vulnerability because they really see it as a weakness, because internally that's what they view it as. And just talking to him and letting him know, he asked me about getting a job. He's in a bad situation, and it may look bad for him by some people when he puts something on his application. So for me, it was like, I never feared telling somebody where I was or what I've done, because I'm no longer that person. And really, that's your strength, being vulnerable and just being honest with yourself. It gives you, if you can accept you, then it makes it easier when you show up in the world, because if no one else accepts you, you accept you, and you ultimately know who you are. The brother said, having knowledge of yourself. That's truly indeed one of the greatest things for us. And we teach truth. Everything starts with truth. No matter what that is, everything starts with truth. If your truth is you're an addict, that's just your truth. It doesn't make you less of a person. That's just your struggle. If you hate your mom or you hate your dad and it causes you to feel inferior, or you have some type of baggage behind that, that's just your truth. You have to deal with that, because everything starts with truth. And then operating out of that truth, it allows you to be vulnerable, because you'll find out that there are other people that are hurting as well. And just by sharing your truth, you give them permission to do the same. You empower them. So for us in our space, we just teach that everything starts with truth. And in doing that and consistently telling them every day, hey, listen, why'd you do that? I don't know. No, yes, you do. We deal with truth here. Why did you do that? Well, the reason why I did it, because I didn't want them to look at me like, okay, You felt vulnerable. You didn't want to feel vulnerable. So you put a mask on. You picked up your fake ID. And when you're in this space, you put down your fake ID. But when you get there, you pick your fake ID up. Why? And we help them explore what are those things that they're struggling with. And we consistently push what we deal with is truth. So for me, that's how we show up in being vulnerable. We use the term, but the term that we ultimately use is everything starts with truth. And this is what you have to deal with. Your mom did something, your wife did something, and you don't like it. You can deny it. That's just a bag. And eventually something's going to come from that. What is your truth? Now you have to deal with that. So that's how we kind of deal with everything. We just teach that everything starts with truth. And as long as you can remain in a place of truth, you can grow.
Well, Josh,
Spent a lot of time trying to, excuse me.
Jeff, go ahead, please.
Appreciate it. Like I try to fail in public. Like I love that, Gary, about being truthful, right? Truthful with selves and things. And part of that truth is failing in public, not hiding it, not, going somewhere else. The coaching world taught me that. Like I loved as coaches basketball for like 15, 16 years. Like if I didn't know how to come up against the 1-3-1 zone, like I was calling people, asking people, right? Asking for help. And it was weird though, as men, like I saw not a lot of men talked about their emotional support that they needed, right? That didn't carry through. And so I don't necessarily think it's failure, but it's just asking for help and asking what I may need. And that level of vulnerability is a strength. To the point where my kids now are just like, Dad, are you crying again? Yeah, sorry, I'm crying again, right? But if you can see it, you can be it. And I do believe that's part of the badge that we get to wear.
I think the courage, we have a veteran Most Club member who talks about, he's an artist, and he says, people are like, oh, take that L. And he taught me this years ago where he was like, there are no L's. He said, they're just wins and lessons. And I really love that, wins and lessons. And I use that with my own children because to your point about, whether it be the scientific method or getting better at some sport you're playing or study skills, it's all about that consistency of practicing and being vulnerable to knowing that, look, you can't possibly know everything. And the willingness to try and fail is what it's why it's so important that children have recess and play. Play is their experimentation. They're supposed to learn through trial and error. And it's not a failure to not hit the mark, but it is a lesson to improve upon whatever it is, whether it be emotional intelligence or some technique you're applying. So Destine, let's shout him out, really was the one who taught me that, again, another veteran Most Club member. And I embraced it because I thought it was right as a lifelong learner, the courage and the bravery to fail publicly is not a shaming thing, but a demonstration of courage and a willingness to get better and to learn and to improve and to be humble in recognizing that, we need other people to help us be our best selves. I mean, it's who we are as a species. Solitary confinement is a punishment for a reason. Babies survive in the NICU with human touch for a reason. We need one another. And I think for us, role modeling healthy masculinity and role modeling our humanity is about demonstrating the vulnerability of needing one another. And for that to be an important lesson, not loss, but lesson for our growth. And so that resonates for me, Jeff, like being able to ask others for guidance is important. And it's one of the things I try to role model for my children. Hey, may I ask you a question? How would you do this? This is what I was thinking, but it didn't work. How would you do it? And it's just been really helpful. And I think it's, to me, a great strength of being willing to learn from other people.
Off of what Neil said, there was kind of that lifelong learning, but willing to admit that you don't know everything. right? Because being dad at home, Papa knows everything. Ask Papa, he's gonna fix it, or he's gonna do. And it feels great to know, right, and be in that position. But it's also is just as valuable to be like, well, I don't know, right? Or let's figure this out together. Now we can create that teachable moment or the core memory, something around that, right? So I'm not always going to have all the answers. And then the other thing that came into my mind around vulnerability is admitting when you're wrong, apologizing to your children. A lot of parents would be like, try to make up some answer, or your children will call you out on something that you've told them to do, and then, well, yeah, that's because I'm the parent, and then that's no, well, okay, you got me. I'm sorry, or I shouldn't have reacted that way. And teaching them and showing through that, being able to apologize to your children, I think it is valuable in that piece as well.
Yeah, earlier, Matt and I did a present. Oh, Shard and I did Matt and I did a presentation earlier. We talked about that as well, and I think some things that we often teach kids things indirectly. So when they do call us out for certain things, right, and we try to make excuses for it, they start to learn that if I have power, I can avoid accountability, right? So now I'm thinking when I get to the point where I'm above somebody, if I do something wrong, all I gotta do is say I'm this adult, I'm the boss, I'm the leader, and I can just shift blame to everybody else, around me, right? Whereas if they see, okay, cool, I can be a leader, I can be a parent, and I can be wrong, right? Those things don't have to mean they're like the opposites, right? These things can still exist in the same realm. I think it's a very big part of like being vulnerable as well. Yeah.
Great point, Marcos. I love the accountability piece. I think that's a big part of all of our work. So I know we're winding down to our time, but I've got one more question I want to present to you all. And it's how did fatherhood change your overall relationships with your loved ones, your partner, your spouse, in your communities that you serve? What did fatherhood do? How did that change those overall relationships, and what did it look like?
I'll jump in and say, when I think about that question, I think about just kind of like my role and who I am amongst my family, right? Like, I feel like to think about how me being a father has impacted others around me in my family. Unfortunately, there are some young ones who don't always be with their fathers, whether they're nieces, nephews, cousins, little cousins, those kinds of things, right? Even community children, right? My kids, friends, etc. But like my house is the house that all the kids come to, right? So, and many of these kids' lives, I'm proud to say that I am the most consistent father kind of person, right? Maybe uncle, maybe big cousin, whatever, but I'm the most consistent man, right? That plays a role, if you will, of fatherhood, like in a way, in their lives. And I'm proud of that because, all of those kids know, right? Like when they come to my house, I'm gonna treat you just like you gonna fall in line, just like one of my kids, right? Like it is what it is, right? I'm gonna discipline you the same way I discipline my kids. I'm gonna have the same expectations of you that I have of my kids. And if your mom or whatever tells me that you out of line, next time I see you, I'm gonna address it, right? Like, and so for me, I just feel really blessed, honestly, to really be that person, because I know I'm thankful just to know that, some of these kids, man, when they're 60, 70 years old, it would be, I may be long gone, but it would be such a blessing for me, for them to think of me and be like, man, I remember Uncle James, or man, Uncle Twan, he taught us these things, or, growing up, he used to be the ones to take us to school and this and that. Like for me, that's a win, right? Like I love thinking about that possibility that, those kids will always remember who I am as an individual, and I'll always be a part of their lives, even though I'm not their biological father. And so I'm blessed to really have that connection and to be trusted, by a lot of people to be that person, You know, there's certain people, you know, in my family or friends or whatever, I can call and be like, yo, this weekend, my lodge or my brothers, we doing this event, you want me to take such and such? And I'm like, yeah, come pick them up, and I do that, so, I'm just blessed to be able to be that person in the lives around me. And I take pride in that.
Yeah, I'll go. I'll say what it changed was perspective, right? So as soon as you become a father, your perspective, I think, is what changes on a whole span of things. All your relationships, understanding now, say you love like your parents or grandparents, you understand the feelings that they had as you were a kid. Like, oh, I was this little kid before. This is what, the feelings that come with that too. We know in this work that the value, what we've learned from the women in this work, but like without my wife, without May grandma here, like the value that, like the role of it being a partnership, right? And that equality, and like we gotta all work together. Like I couldn't imagine doing this on my own, right? Like there's no way, and that those that have to do that and just that perspective, right? Of like, wow, this is, there's no, you don't get to take time off from being a parent, right? And parenting and fathering and in that respect. So, and then even within the community, right? Like, I think it just changes how you see and view all of those different roles that you have. So perspective, really.
You did say something earlier, Neil, about like having young people engaged, knowing that they were in the game to help raise your kids. And I think that is part of the work that we get to do is building community and allowing through conversations, through modeling, but letting young folks know, like at the root of it, my partner and I got 2 little birds in the world and they need more green. And so y'all are helping us cultivate. And I think that has changed my perspective of maybe expanded the why a little bit. And then the other piece to it has allowed me to question some of the things that I came up as a son. Like I got to question my father and my mother, the way they parented me, in that I get to do things not differently because they were always bad, but just different because situations, and with my partner, we get to create now how we're going to show up in our partnership and raising them. So, questioning the family lineage, but also then cultivating the community around, and it's made the bigger we. And I think that's part of this beautiful journey for us.
Yeah, I just would say, like, as parents, co-parenting children, it's easy. Like I remember very distinctly at a point, children's mother and I were still together, and we were, just doing our thing as parents. And I literally drove to my parents' house and I was able to sit and have a conversation and thank them because that perspective had changed. I was like, wow, you all did this for this long? I mean, it all rushed over you as to how dedicated they had been and what kind of people they were and how fortunate we all were, for no other reason than the luck of the draw in many ways. When you think about some of the young people that we serve, I have to regularly remind our children, everyone is not as blessed and as fortunate as we are, and that this is where your mother and I's work is around giving back out of a responsibility, accountability to serve others who aren't as fortunate in so many different ways. And by doing so, those lessons for us about how to not only be humble, but to be servant leaders in a really important way is a tremendous gift. I mean, it just is a tremendous gift. And in any way, whether it be mentoring young people or parenting our children, I'm just so thankful that the clarity I think I have about that in this moment, as it hopefully continues to expand and evolve, has me moving in the right direction of recognizing how special it is to be in service to other people. And I do that as a father, and I do that as a mentor, and I do that as a friend and an uncle. But I want to own my maleness in doing this as well. I do this as a man who is so thankful for what that means for me, and that is something that I think is serviceable. Others benefit from my relationship to my maleness.
Yeah. This question just brings up two words for me. One, it kind of piggyback off of what Neil said. The first word is appreciation. My son was born in June 2020. So I didn't get this, he didn't, get to meet his grandparents right away. He didn't get to meet, his uncles and aunts, close friends. He didn't get to meet his village for about a year or so. So the first time I got to really be in person with my parents and my mother-in-law, I just had so much appreciation because I know their stories, and I had so much appreciation just for the love that they poured in, and the knowledge and the patience that they had raising, me and my siblings. And the appreciation I know I had for my mother-in-law because I know my wife's story, and that just appreciation for the parents, for being a parent, and all the time and the love that it takes to be a parent, to be a good parent, to be a present parent, and understanding. I mentioned before that I'm lucky to have my father in my life, and he came into my life at 13. But the understanding piece was really for my biological father. Because my biological father became a parent. My sister was born when he was 17 years old. And like all of our parents on the screen, and all of the parents that are watching and that we interact with, or the mentors, we all have a story. And I really started to understand my biological father's story and appreciate it. And that healing started to take place even more. A lot of healing already took place, and me and him were in a good place, but it was another layer. It was unpacking and understanding. So I appreciated him more for not being there, but also the times where he was there, and the relationship that we built, over the last decade. So the appreciation, the understanding, and as far as just working in community, it helped me just be even more patient. And it also gave me another layer to, our work here at MCSR is based off of storytelling and being in community and telling and really being in community and sharing of yourself. And it gave me another layer of an opportunity to share. My life changed for the better 3 years ago. But there's new things, there's new layers to talk about, right? When I meet all with you, we do this all the time. Gave me more things to talk about and more time to think about things and ask questions of the village that me and my wife had created. And the men, like Neil said, the maleness, the men on this screen that I fully take advantage of you all's maleness and of y'all presence. So just that role is so important in the evolution of certain relationships, and also in the role of sustaining a lot of those relationships in my personal life and in community as well. So I know we don't have much time, fellas, and I thank y'all. So appreciative of you all on a daily basis. But I want to just leave some space. Any last words, any last messages to the audience that is watching us, to each other, to our families, to our fathers, to our mentors, to our leaders in our community. I just want to provide you all space with one final word, shout out as we end this conversation.
I'll say, Jason, I want to shout out all the fathers out there, right? Because I think that historically the narrative has been that, which justifiable, right? There's stats to prove a lot of this stuff, but that men don't show up in their kids' lives, or they're not there, they don't take care of their kids, etc. And that's kind of like the narrative. So it's like, when you have a good man or a father that's there, everybody's like, oh my God, look, he's good, here's a good father. But like most of the men that I know, right, and maybe it's what you attract, but most of the men that I know are great fathers, right? All of you are great fathers. Like people, I come into great fathers all the time. And so great fathers exist, right? Good fathers exist. whether they're with their spouse or living with their children or not, good fathers exist. And so I just want to, just kind of, again, just shout out the fathers out there. Certainly mothers deserve all the praise, but I just want to save space for the fathers and thank y'all brothers for what y'all do and who y'all are.
I'll just echo the same. It always is great to be with you all and to know that there are men out there who are trying to get it right, trying to be examples, and that, again, when Jason and Josh are busy, if I know I needed to reach out, I know you all are there, and I know that you all, have the expectations of, me trying to be my best self and can be a resource to ask questions of you all and your experience. So I'm just, again, thankful. And like James said, there's a lot of examples of men out here who are doing the right thing in the lives of community, and we want to certainly lift them up. We hear so much of the negative of what's going on when it comes to violence, just wholesale. I love it when we can have examples of what right looks like in terms of people trying to be our best selves, regardless of identity or gender. But for the fathers, we're really out here and we really have been for a long, long time in all different ways. So again, it's just a great honor to be with you, men, and to learn from you and to be in relationship with you. It's a blessing.
Echo that big love and just say thanks, y'all, for allowing the space. But also when we ask for help, right, that allows somebody to show us love. So Neil, that call comes and let me show you love. So I would appreciate that opportunity. And to you all, man. So thank you.
I'll reflect what Jeff said there. Thank you all for the spaces. I'm still learning, and we all get to learn from each other. So find your community, continue to learn and grow. That's what we're all doing.
Yeah, I think I would just echo some of the same sentiments that's been just expressed on this call. Just really big thanks to everyone on this call and the work that you're doing in your respective communities. I want to send some energy your way because we do know that this work requires a lot of ourselves on a consistent basis. Jason loves to talk about community and consistency. I love it just to talk about the relationship that we have to our community and the people that are in our lives every day, and the importance of us showing up and being our best selves at all times. So I just want to say thank you all for being there on this call, and to your communities and to your families.
I just want to say all that is good and all, for sure. But Josh, how can I get that logo on your shirt though? I like that. Yeah, I need that for the next year Morse Club logo.
We got you, man. I'll send it to you via email. All
right.
I love when our gear resonates with the young folks, right? You do know that, right? So you just made my day right there, Marco. So we win it again. We don't even feel like that was our best one. So that you feel like you won it? Yeah, we win it, Josh. Don't let them know. That's amazing. I love that.
Yes, for sure.
Hey, brothers, I need to jump. I got fatherhood duty as well. So I appreciate you all.
That's Neil. I just want to thank everybody. Thank you, everybody, for your time. We'll be checking in again. And big thank you from MCSR to all of you, because all of y'all are fathers and father figures, mentors, and role models to your families and communities. So enjoy your night, and we'll talk to y'all soon.
See y'all soon.
Yeah, fellas.